Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB Bikini Pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Today, we are speaking with a nurse, adjunct college nursing instructor, online competition and lifestyle coach, personal trainer, and mother to 5 daughters. She started competing in 2018 as a figure competitor and turned pro in the bikini division at her third national show, which was the 2020 NPC Universe, before going on to compete in 5 pro shows in 2021 and just recently Golden State this past April. Welcome to the show, Ashley Duncan. How are you doing?
I am great. Thank you for having me on. It's kind of surreal because I was just telling you, I've listened to all your episodes. So actually when I was listening to the intro, I was like, oh yeah, it's me. It's
next. Happening.
I'm not listening.
That's so awesome. I'm happy that you've listened to them. That always makes me feel good, honestly, especially going into these interviews. So I do appreciate that. And I'm going to ask if you have a ritual right before your heel hits the stage.
It's not really a ritual, but I do. I just really pray for confidence, to be honest. I get very nervous. And so I take some deep breaths in that, but I also found I don't like to watch the athletes in front of me do their routine. I feel like that has really helped, but really it's just trying to find my inner confidence. And I feel like that ritual maybe changes from show to show, just depending. So
that's understandable for sure. I think you've got your basics down, right? Like don't watch people in front of you and say
just
a prayer.
Yeah. And I'm not, I love chatting with people, but I feel like once we get backstage in that, I kind of keep more to myself and just kind of zone in. So
I think that's awesome. I think some people might get nervous about kind of secluding themselves or isolating or being like the quiet one if everyone is dancing or having fun around them. But at the end of the day, you really do have to do what's best for you.
Right.
So I want to start off by talking about your switch from figure to bikini. This is so cool. So what inspired that?
So I've trained, I started really working out in the gym. I was in like 8th grade. I can remember the summer of 8th grade, and that's where I really found a love for it. And even all through high school, I liked sports, but to be honest, I wasn't that great. And so I would do like volleyball and track, and I was athletic, but I was never like the star. And I never really found like that one sport that I just felt really confident and really good at. And so that's where my love for weightlifting, because it was just me time and I could challenge myself with my weights, and I felt like this is where I really fit. And so I carried that with me through high school, through college. I continued lifting with pregnancies, and I just genetically too, I tend to be more upper body dominant. And anyway, I ended up coming across somebody who was doing bodybuilding, I think on Facebook, and it really intrigued me. And so I started following her journey, and, I spoke to my husband about it and decided that, okay, this is something I could do. I think what was important, or what really stood out for me, is, once the kids are in school, and I don't know, I feel like we all just kind of get to that point where, it's like I was training, but I wasn't really training with intention. And I was just kind of missing that spark. And so I was still going to the gym and still showing up, but I just felt like I needed something more. I needed that goal. So got into figure because I felt like that's where I would fit best after doing some research on my own. So I did some figure shows, did well at smaller local shows. I did 2 national shows, junior nationals and universe, and placed like in the middle. And feedback there was always size, upper body through the lats. And anyway, then the pandemic came about, as we all know, in 2020. And I was getting ready to do some national shows that summer. And my coach at the time, we were just kind of discussing, and he's like, to put on size to make you be competitive for these summer shows, if they even happen, of course, we need size. And that, how realistic with the equipment you have at home are we going to really be able to put on size? So he kind of encouraged me to kind of lose muscle to fall into the bikini division instead. And then, I could still do home workouts and what I had access to that summer. And so, yeah, I officially made that switch in May of 2020 and did my first bikini show, the Mother Load, I believe it was the end of June, and placed second. And then about a month later, I did the show in Omaha and I placed third or fourth. I don't really remember. Yeah. And then I did Junior USA's that following. Well, I know it's usually held in May, but that year it was in September, I believe. I don't really remember it. That year is really little foggy.
It's a blur.
Yes. And then like 3 days later, it was North Americans. And so I went from 14th at Junior USA's and 4th at North Americans. So that kind of, motivated me to keep on going, and then did Universe that November. And then got my pro card there.
That's amazing. I love this journey too. And such an interesting reason for transitioning too. It was like you were committed to figure, but because of circumstance, you switched to bikini. So do you want to stay in bikini? Do you love bikini now?
Yes. Just following the sport now over the last couple years, just kind of seeing where figure has gone. Actually, Sid Gillen was my posing coach. And first of all, she is just the neatest person. And, but, she's the reigning Miss Olympia for figure. And, to look at her physique, it's just, I feel like for me, that's just unrealistic. And so, and beyond that, now that, I really feel embedded into bikini and I feel like it's my best fit. Of course, there's always changes to be made. But I would say one of the hardest things about bikini versus figure is the posing. So I have definitely struggled with that over the years. So.
And I really want to hear more about that. So what have you done to support you in really improving your posing for the bikini division?
Well, first of all, it's come a long ways. I will say that. So I should give myself some grace for that. But I think the first part, first of all, the posing has always been my downfall. And I think anyone who follows me closely or close friends, bodybuilder friends, and that they know that that's just really my weak spot. The training and the nutrition and all of the bikini things, I can do really well and I'll do it 100%. But posing has just really been a struggle. And I think it really comes down to just confidence. And, I feel like I'm awkward. And so coming out of that shell a little bit, but I've really had to make that commitment to, okay, not just posing when I feel like it, but really making that commitment to posing every single day. And not when I'm just like close to a show, but this last year, it's been every single day. Sometimes I'll give myself Saturdays off just for like a mental break, but otherwise it's been really consistent. The other thing that's super helpful is working with our posing coach on our team. And I'm with Team Atlas. And she is really phenomenal. She's very detailed oriented. And she really has an eye for just how I move my body. And she's really just been so patient with me, even when I haven't been patient with myself, and just giving me those pointers. But really, I would say it just comes down to consistency and just in doing it. And I wish I could say I liked posing now, but I still really just don't. So I've learned to kind of just accept that, but we all have to do things that we don't like. And it's such a, huge part of the bikini division. So I feel like every day I just get a little bit better, and trying to find that confidence is probably just that biggest struggle for me.
Absolutely. And Angelique has been on this podcast twice. So she came on once with Team Atlas for Coaches series, and she came on for a presentation series that I did. And I always just find her posing to be beautiful. What she's been able to turn out is awesome. So
yes. And like I was saying too, like sometimes I'll turn a certain way or I'll move my foot a certain way, and she'll have me stop, and it's like she saw it. And then I was like, oh, I didn't even know. So she's really been helpful. So I'm very grateful for her.
And how do you manage to take the words that she shares, or like the cues that she gives you, from practicing daily to the stage? Because I imagine there's a lot to think about. So are you relying on muscle memory, or are you walking through those cues in your head on stage?
So I journal most days after my posing, my own personal posing. And then whenever we have our FaceTime posing practices, which I do once a week, I always write down in journal exactly what we worked on. And I also like to reflect too on the things that I felt like I improved on, and then the things that still need to be worked on, and then what she also specifically wants me to work on. And then she has a posing academy, and I also do that. And that includes submitting 3 videos a week that she gives feedback to. So I feel like for the most part, I have about 4 times a week that I'm actually actively posing with feedback. And then the other 2 to 3 days, it's just me individually. So it's a lot of posing. But for me, that's what I've needed. And I needed that push.
Yes, especially with gaining confidence. Part of having confidence is having a belief in our ability, or being able to see a result.
Right. And seeing the changes over the months, and I'll pull up a video sometimes from a couple months ago and watch that, and then watch a more recent one. And that reminds me that, okay, I'm not perfect. I'm never going to be perfect, but I am making changes. And the other thing I've done is just really studying the posing routines of the other athletes, and kind of finding different ones that I can resonate with and their style. And that's been helpful too, just to kind of see how their body moves, and how they just present themselves has been helpful.
Oh, I know. That's exactly what I do too. I obsess over the NPC News Online YouTube until it's updated. So today they just uploaded all the ones for Pittsburgh Pro, and I was like, yes, finally I get to. By the way, those of you listening, we're recording this on May 9th. This is going to come out in June at some point, but I think sometimes people listen and think I just recorded this yesterday, but I didn't, just for context. But yeah, I obsess over that. And the cool thing about it too is you kind of pick up on little things. I personally watched Maureen a lot, and I picked up on, because I liked her walk and her flair, and I picked up on the fact that I noticed a lot of bikini pros were turning their toes slightly every step, and it was helping their hips move. That's hard to verbalize.
Yes.
But you know what I'm saying? And so you pick up on little things just from watching. And I think it can give you a bit of a confidence booster, that push to go in there and pose and get in that energy.
Yes. Yeah. And then on the flip side of that too, it has made me more aware of maybe posing You can see posing that's strong, like strong posing, and then
Mhm.
other posing that isn't as strong. And what has been helpful for me too is just seeing some things that athletes tend to do that can be distracting. And not saying like their posing's not good, because we can all learn, but that's helped me too to kind of see like, okay, what is distracting if I'm an audience member or a judge just watching a posing routine? What did I find my eyes attracted to? Maybe she did something that instead of my eyes going to her glutes, it went to an arm movement or hair or, something. So it's just made me more aware of things that I can do and to avoid to really just help improve my posing.
Yes, I've been surprised where I see some girls with these incredible glutes play so much with their hair because it's very distracting. And then
Yeah.
you see someone like Laura Lee, for example, who will like tap her glutes into her back pose and it draws your eyes to her glutes, which is one of her
Right.
strongest points. So you end up focusing on that. Are there other things you've noticed are distracting or maybe helpful?
I have noticed the arms, and I think that's something that we all have probably seen too. The rainbowing of the arms. I feel like some athletes it works well with, and some it's distracting. And I've tried different arm movements myself, and I find that the more I can just keep my arms relaxed and just let them move naturally. But if I start trying to do anything fancier with my arms, it becomes just really unnatural and distracting. So,
One of the best tips I heard from James, your coach, actually was 5 inches. Like, never let your arms go more than 5 inches from your body. And damn, I made that mistake at USA's. I made a lot of mistakes at USA's. I want to like not even talk about it, but like that was a really cool tip. On the flip side, as well as watching other people pose and just being in this industry in general, have you ever dealt with comparison or doubts about yourself?
for sure. Yeah. And I think so part of it is, maybe some imposter syndrome. Like last year when I turned pro and then really starting those pro shows, I think I was just so in shock when I would go to these shows and see these amazing athletes, many who I had followed on Instagram and then to be on the same stage as them. First of all, I was so grateful and it was such a blessing to be able to do that. But at the same time, there was a part of me that's like, I like don't belong here. Like I can't pose. My glutes are nowhere near where they needed to be. And I treated last year really as just getting the experience on stage. And so maybe it was, I didn't mean to have like a negative attitude toward it, but with each show, to be honest, my goal was just to maybe crack top half and improve my posing with each show, get my tan down, get kind of my look down. It was never really about placing last year. And so then my last show was in August and it was the worst I had looked, by the way. And so I knew I needed solid time off, took that time, and I vowed that when I came back this year that I was not going to compete unless I truly felt like I had made the changes that I needed to, or the improvements. And then furthermore, I was going to have more of a strategy as far as like what shows to do, the timing. Last year, I did one show a month for 5 months in a row. And I'm not sure why I thought that was a good idea. And each show I looked a little worse. So, but yeah, with scheduling in the summer, it's just the way it worked out, but it was really not a good plan. So
What would have been better?
I think it just would have made more sense that when I felt like I was ready to do, 2 or 3, 4, a run of them, and then take that time off and then, make the changes, make improvements, and then come back instead of, drawing it out. Cause I was always like approaching peak week and coming out of post show week. and then, for about 5 months. So it just was not ideal. And really, there's not much improvements that you can make as far as, my feedback was glute size. Doing those shows like that just did not, was not going to make those changes. And part of that was just learning and the experience. And I know what not to do.
Well, that's what you wanted, right? Was to learn. And
every show I did learn something. And I do feel like even though maybe physique wise, I came up maybe showing a little worse each time, but the other aspects of it, I did, posing, I got a little bit more confident each time, made some little changes with hair, tanning I got done, where I feel more confident doing that on my own now. So all those things were wins at least.
Definitely. Yeah. Don't we always learn something from every show? And then we can look back and be like, okay, next one, I'll manipulate this variable. Okay. Right. Now I'll improve on this one. And I love, by the way, earlier you mentioned you write down things that can improve or things that have already improved with posing. And I think that also applies with reflecting on every show.
Yes. Yeah.
So speaking of knowing when it's the right time to step on stage, you did decide to step on stage this year in April, despite having been many weeks out from your originally planned show of this season. So what was your coach hoping to see or accomplish in doing this most recent show? And how are you feeling about that decision now?
So my first show was going to be, I'm still doing the show, but in June. And so I was about, like 16, 17 weeks out or so. It all kind of runs together. We'll just say a long ways out. And, James, he was saying, you look really good. Everything's on point. And condition wise, I do tend to stay kind of in a good range, I would say. And I think part of that is just over years of maintaining just this as a lifestyle. And so, I've never gotten to the point where I've put on a lot of, weight post shows or anything like that. I just kind of teeter between that 6 to 8 pound difference. And so anyway, the problem is that, like I said earlier, I do tend to be upper body dominant. And so James's concern was, was I getting too imbalanced upper body? And so we had stopped training upper body, but the concern was still there of, okay, he doesn't see me in person, obviously. And so sometimes that's hard to gauge with pictures, what I look like, but what would I look like next to other athletes? Mm-hmm. And so he encouraged me, let's just hop into a show and see you next to other athletes. And then that way we kind of know, are we overshooting too much or are we right where we need to be? And so I was like, okay. So that made me about 5 weeks out at the time, 4 or 5 weeks out. And to be honest, I was really nervous because at that point, I was sitting about 8 pounds, 10 pounds over what my last show in August was. And so that just messed with my head a bit because in my mind, I thought I'm not ready. And I just really had to trust James and his feedback of, nope, conditioning's there. I really upped the posing, of course, and really my cardio went up one time and it was by really not much. And we dropped macros just a little bit 1 week, but then the rest of it, I actually ate more. It was the weirdest 5 weeks ever. But anyway, so did the show and I did get my best placing that I had ever gotten, which was 9th. Mm-hmm. But my goal was always to get that top 10. Last year, I was thought, gosh, if I could get top 10, that would be a good starting point. And so I got that. So I was excited.
That's really, really cool. And what do you think contributed to the improvements that you made over that time period of from competing in your last show to competing in this show? What did you focus on? What improved and how did you make those improvements?
So I definitely have been eating more than I ever have. And, I've always been kind of scared to really, because like I said earlier, because I kind of just stay within that certain weight range. And because this has always been just kind of a lifestyle, I've really have had yet to, I guess, allow myself to just really eat more that was necessary. So some of the times when James would bump the macros and that, and we do meal plans. And so when the macros were increased, it really was hard for me to follow. But I promised myself if I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. And at the end of the day, and at the end of each show, if I truly knew that I did exactly what I was told every time, every day, that I would be okay with whatever the outcome was. So surprisingly, still really next to no cardio. I mean, very minimal. We're talking like 15 minutes, 20 minutes
Wow.
most. And then calories were highest I've ever eaten. And just being consistent, I really focused on posing, like we said. But the other things I did every single day was stretching, like the yoga wheel, did my vacuums twice a day, every single day, my water every day, my supplements, the food. I mean, just every box had to be checked at the end of the day, or I did not go to sleep. And that is, I think maybe like one day in there, maybe I missed like one of those things, whether it was like a posing or stretching. And like I said, Saturdays, I usually give myself off from the posing, but otherwise everything else is always there. And I think that consistency, and I think that also helped contribute to confidence, because then I knew that I did my part.
Yes. That is honestly like my mentality right now, personally, where I see my body. I'm like, I don't think it's where it needs to be for the show or where I would want to be at this point, but I know that I'm doing everything I'm being asked.
Okay.
And like, that's good for me right now. And there'll be some changes coming soon for me too. But like that mentality and knowing that you did everything you could is honestly so rewarding. And it's important that we embrace some of those changes, even if we're not used to it or not expecting it. And for you, that meant eating more and taking off a lot more boxes. So how does prep look compared to improvement season or vice versa? Because I understand this is your lifestyle, but I'm wondering if there's any difference for you.
There really wasn't like a huge change. Like I was just saying, once we like made that switch into, okay, I went from an improvement season to 5 weeks out. My cardio got bumped by like 5 minutes, I think initially. And macros got decreased just once, but then I had dropped weight, so we went right back up. So really, it wasn't much change. I think what really has to change, like right now, is the upper body. And so just bringing down my upper body. And at this point, I haven't trained any upper body since, gosh, it's been 6 or 7 weeks. So
Wow.
yeah, and that's actually, it sounds kind of like, oh, that, a couple less training days a week, but it's really hard on the flip side, because my shoulders and that's really I guess my trademark, and I really like my shoulders, and I like the look of it, and I like to feel like Hulk when I lift.
Yeah.
And so to let some of those muscle gains just go down, and I enjoy lifting upper body, so then to not do that, it's it's not the greatest, but part of the sport is adapting to what the criteria is. And I'm not going to be doing this forever, and so there will be a time when I can go back to lifting heavy upper body, but right now I'm committed to doing what's needed to fit the criteria. So a lot of glute work and volume. And that's probably what changed the most for me regarding this year versus last year, is really just increasing glute days and volume.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because I was curious how starting in figure and transitioning to bikini might have influenced your body image. And it sounds like letting go of the muscle you had worked so hard to build over all these years is difficult, but there's clearly something deeper in you that's making you want to commit to this process and change and meet feedback and criteria. So what is it that keeps you doing this despite having to give up certain things that you enjoy?
That's a good question, because sometimes I question it myself. Like, why do we do this? But kind of like what I touched on earlier, I feel like sometimes we, at least myself personally, I need something to work towards. And life gets really busy, and, the kids and home life and, different hats that I wear as far as, job. It's like competing for me keeps me grounded, and it keeps me working towards something. And even when a show is months away, just knowing that it's there keeps me working every day. And I find that when I am focused on doing those things, everything else in my life also seems to align better. So I feel like I'm just more productive overall. I work better when I have a routine and a schedule. I feel like the kids, I'm able to keep them all situated better. I just have more energy. I feel better overall. And so it really, even though you're working towards that day, show day, it's like everything else just fits and molds better in my life because of it. And so sometimes I think like, gosh, when I don't want to compete anymore, it kind of scares me, because I feel like that has been such a huge part of my life right now. But it definitely is difficult sometimes finding that balance. But because it is more of a lifestyle that has, some extra stuff to it, it hasn't been that much of a change.
And therefore that makes it more easy or seamless to commit to.
Right. Yep. And actually, like the first, when I started in figure, that first year, or the first show at least, I never told anybody that I was going to compete. I mean, my husband knew, and the kids ended up knowing, but otherwise I didn't say anything. And my thought behind that, well, first of all, I live in a very small town. Bodybuilding, especially even 5 years ago, was just kind of not heard of much. And, just, I don't know, I felt really nervous about what the community would think. Here I am, a mom, a nurse, college instructor, and here I'm going to get on a stage in this tiny bikini. So, I really kept it quiet for the first little bit. But the kids never really caught on, because it was so much like what I was already doing. I just got up extra early for the extra cardio. They were all sleeping anyway. And then I stopped, I just cleaned up my diet at that point. And so a lot of that just looked like not taking bites of all of their stuff. So, right. But yeah, so I'm not sure where I was going with that, but anyway, I think just making it a lifestyle has made it to be where I can really embrace this and embrace competing and not have it impede too much on other aspects of my life.
Yes. And I like how you were able to identify all the ways that competing actually supports you in showing up for those roles. And I like how you can relate back to an old version of yourself that was worried about the judgment or criticism you might receive, but it seems like it flowed really seamlessly. And I'm curious what it's like competing and seeing, your body fluctuations you said aren't too intense or anything, but just manipulating your diet strategically and committing to the cardio and living this lifestyle. Like, how is that with your daughters watching you? Have you ever had concerns about how bodybuilding will impact them?
Yes. So that was also kind of the other issue that I struggled with initially, because I remember growing up, middle school, high school, I had body image issues, and I can remember just how, it really takes a toll. And anyway, I was nervous that, or I just, between my husband and I, we have 5 daughters. And, 5 years ago, the oldest, she was 16, 17. And then the youngest at the time, was like 7, 8. All the ages are starting to run together. Mm-hmm. But, one of the concerns, because they are at that, such an important age with body image, is I didn't want them to see what I was doing and view it just as a sport of vanity, or, even people in the community, or sometimes just people in general that don't understand what bodybuilding is. It's like immediately I feel like people are quick to jump to say like, oh my gosh, I could never starve myself like they do. Mm-hmm. And I have to remind people, and this is what I've showed my daughters over the years, that bodybuilding is what it says it is. It's building your body. And in order to do that, you have to feel your body, and you have to, give it the fuel, the healthy fuel, so that you can have effective workouts and feel good. And so that's what I've tried to show them, that, competing has given me a goal. It keeps me structured. It keeps me working hard and disciplined, like all those things about competing that, we work towards, but they also see the dedication of showing up to the gym. They see what my workouts are. They see that I do cardio, but in my opinion, most importantly, they see that I eat, and they see that I make good food choices. And they also see that I like to enjoy cake at birthdays, and I like cookies at Christmas, so it's been important to me to show them that it's about living a healthy lifestyle. And they also know that there is a time, depending on where I'm at in prep, where I have to get really tighten up things as far as the diet. But over the years, I feel like it's been a positive influence for them. But that is what I worried about initially, was how do I show this to them without giving them the false assumption that it's just about looking a certain way. Because to me, actually, I know some girls love show day, and they love the glam and the makeup and the hair. And I actually don't care for show day. And it's the journey that gets me there, is what keeps me in the sport.
Yeah, I think that's really key, because if you only ever look forward to show day, you're going to feel quite empty after it's done, because it goes by in a blink, huh?
Yes.
It sounds like you were really mindful with explaining, or maybe educating, and being intentional with every action you take, and introducing or showing your daughters and your family and the community as well that you can prioritize healthy living and healthy lifestyle, pursue something that maybe appears to be more extreme without it actually being as extreme as other people might think all the time.
Yeah. And I think too, just kind of like what you mentioned too, just educating people. And now I feel like, everybody, when I talk to people in the community, and I do, some personal training and more online coaching in that too, it's been really awesome how supportive, people are, and my family, and, everybody just kind of, let me back up. Sometimes, and I've heard this from some of my athletes as well, that there's some anxiety around saying no. So an example would be, you go out with friends and you don't have a certain food, or saying no at a family gathering to food and that. And I understand what that's like, because it used to be that way, where I would find myself saying no to certain social situations, or avoiding certain gatherings because of the food aspect. But what I found over the years is that the more you can just be honest about what your goals are, and just own that, and not feel like you have to hide things from people, or to feel guilty, because you're going to have those people who make comments like, oh yeah, you can't have that, where it's kind of like a passive aggressive, jab. But the more I just learned to just let that go and realize that comments that people make as far as that has to do with their own insecurities, not mine. And I would never approach somebody and say, oh, why don't you have another Twinkie? You know, but there's like this like backwards, standards as far as that, if that's okay or not. So anyway, I just learned to let those things go. And once I was able to do that, I can go to events and I can be the one who's not drinking, and I can be the one who has my meals shoved in my purse and random mustard containers in the bottom of my purse,
Totally
that's
get that.
Yeah, it's like, that's just me. And my friends know that, my family knows that, the kids, my family knows that when we have like family potlucks or, gatherings, that I'm probably going to be the one that brings the relish tray, which is, like your carrots and celery and maybe a salad, but I'll probably just bring my own meal anyway. So I really don't care what everyone brings. The people who matter are the ones who will just be supportive. And there's no sense in giving up on some of those important events, the social events, just because you can't partake in the eating part. So.
And we teach people how to talk to us about food and our body as well. Like, we have a role in this where the way we speak about this lifestyle and this journey is going to influence how other people view it. So if we're speaking negative, or I wish I could have that, or, those kinds of comments that we make or fixations that we point out make them either worry about us or just want to be like, oh yeah, you should have it, or why don't you just have it? And those comments then feel like they're not supportive. And I like to teach the I feel statement, but it's like, if someone that you've told and who says they support you does things or says things that feel unsupported, you can tell them, like, whenever you say XYZ, I feel like you're not supporting my goals of ABC. And then you can have an actual genuine conversation, rather than what I do notice some competitors do as well, is just assume that no one wants to understand, no one wants to support. That's not true. They just don't know how. So we have to teach them as well.
Right. And it's uncomfortable too. I think for other people, if you're eating out to lunch and then a person pulls out their Tupperware out of their purse, it's like, okay. So I think the more open you can be about it, and at least that's what's really helped me, is just being open. And, little things like my youngest daughter, she's so sweet. She'll have something like a treat or, I don't know, ice cream, and she'll be eating it. And then she'll know that I probably shouldn't have any or a bite, but every once in a while she'll be like, Mom, this bite would be worth it. But she knows like kind of what I think would be worth it and whatnot. So yeah. And she'll tell me, she'll be like, don't even try it. It's not worth it. So
that's cute.
But yeah, all the girls, they're so supportive, and I'm really blessed. My husband's very supportive. It's really, I love the lifestyle, and I love the life lessons of the lifestyle. And I also like teaching others and helping educate others that, competing doesn't have to be miserable. I think sometimes people like to glorify the misery of prep. And I don't know, I just think that's odd, because first of all, like, we're the ones choosing to do this, but then if all you do is complain about it, it's like, I can't understand sometimes, like, is it the attention from the complaining? I don't know. And sometimes I feel like, because of my age and the ages of our daughters, I don't know if sometimes I'm like, okay, is that my mom brain, like, analyzing that, or is it just me analyzing something? I don't know.
You're definitely not alone in that.
Okay. But that's been kind of like makes me think of, the ages of my daughters. Sometimes there have been times where I'm on the stage with other athletes who are, not much older than my husband's oldest. So, sometimes that messes with me too, where I'm like, gosh, like I'm like the old one up here, and I'm not that old. I'm 36. I'm okay with that. But when I think some of these athletes are in their lower 20s, that does maybe contribute to some of the confidence also. And those girls in the early 20s, mid 20s, they also grew up in a different type of environment, as far as like the social media and that too. So sometimes the social media too is kind of difficult for me to navigate, or I navigate it differently.
Right. And is your goal to continue competing in the open division?
Yes. James and I have spoken, because I have asked that before, where I'm like, do you think, am I still okay in the open? And until he feels like I'm not, I will trust that and then maybe switch over to just masters. But right now I feel like I'm still a good fit for open. So we'll keep doing that.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to recognize, like, when you are stepping on stage and you're older than the other people around you. I'd like to think of someone like Angelica, who she was in her later 30s when she won the Olympia, her mid 30s anyways,
Mm-hmm.
and the Arnold. So it's like, okay, there's a lot to be said about the density and the maturity and the poise and the presence and all those things. And yeah, I don't know. I think you said just a masters competitor, and I'm like, no way, like just compete in masters. No, it would be so amazing still. And I could tell you really lead by example, working various jobs, nurse, professor, coach. You're balancing your home life and your kids, and you're competing. You said your husband's really supportive. So how do you guys manage your time so you can wear all these hats?
Well, that does get challenging. I will say that he's a family physician, and so he is very busy in his career. And so I don't know. We just kind of, some days we don't see each other hardly at all, and then other days we do. So you kind of find that groove of routines, but then also, as the kids get older, schedules start changing. So I feel like probably these last couple years has really been busy in our household, just because of the various activities that the kids are in, between like dance and sports and music, arts, plays. Each one of them has their own kind of hobby, which I love, and they're all very different. His oldest will be graduating college, and then going on for her graduate degree. And yeah, so all these, we just got done with recitals this past weekend, so we had 6 recitals. That was a lot. So there's always something. There's FFA, which is like an agriculture orchestra, all the things. So right now I just feel like our family is just really busy at work and at home, but we just kind of manage, I guess. I wish I had a better answer for how we manage, but it gets done.
Well, how do you schedule out your season with all these different commitments?
So when I was scheduling out like the shows, about, I don't know, it would have been like January, February range, I just started looking through the schedule at that point, and then just kind of marking, like I would cross off which ones for sure would not work. And then the ones that were remaining, I tried to find ones that were geographically, that we could travel to pretty easily. So that kind of narrowed it down. And then as far as like trying to get a couple in a row, so I guess that was my strategy there. But as far as like organizing the house, I'm still old fashioned. I like a paper planner.
Mhm.
And so I'll put like immediate appointments in my phone as I'm making them. But then I sit down every Wednesday and schedule out the following week in a paper planner that has like hour by hour. A lot of issues that I run into where we live, it's such a small, so I live in Iowa, small rural community. And like to give you an example, we only have one stoplight in the whole county. And
Wow.
so our nearest like Walmart or like town, like bigger town, is 30 minutes. Well, a short 30 minutes. And so, and then the kids, my youngest, because we have like 100-mile radius of our school district. And so she goes to school in a school that's like 15 miles away. So
Wow.
we have a lot of drive time. So we have to schedule my paper planner by the hour. A lot of times is a lot of just driving time, or I have to schedule the drive.
Wow. And is that where that's not where you grew up, right?
Yes, I was actually born here too.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
how did you meet your husband?
He ended up coming here for just job,
Hmm.
working rural Iowa.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So well, I should maybe ask, like, what does your role as a nurse and as a teacher look like? Like, I'm curious, like, what do you do? Kind of break that down for us outside of bodybuilding and coaching and the sport.
Yeah. So I feel like, so I started nursing back in 2007. And because we're a small community, you have to, the small rural hospital here, you have to be cross-trained in multiple departments. So I guess my first love was obstetrics, like labor and delivery. And then, we have to know, obviously, med surg. And then I would cross into home care and hospice, a little ICU, some clinic. I never did ER though. It wasn't my thing. But then I started doing clinical instructing for community college back in 2011. So I was kind of doing that part-time. And then I kind of became the nurse at the hospital that would be kind of the float nurse to all the different departments. So even back then, I kind of was like, I feel like the jack of all trades, but master of none. But it worked really well with my instructing with the nursing students, because then I had just a general knowledge base that really could help them out. And then clinicals really changed over the pandemic, just because, nursing students weren't allowed into the hospitals anymore. And so therefore I really wasn't needed, because they were doing a lot of Zoom type stuff and simulation, that sort of thing. So I kind of actually was out of the education aspect of it up until last year. And then I stepped in and I've been doing more classroom instructing versus the clinical instructing. And then I actually fill in and work with my husband once a week at least. And then I have the students. I just got done with one of their classes. And yeah, and then just kind of fill in different roles. But it's been really helpful because so I also do online training and some in-person training, and having the knowledge base of a nurse and just how the body works, even things like, electrolytes and, how manipulating water and carbs and the nutrition aspect, having that nursing background has been really helpful, not only for my nursing students, but then also as a coach, so that I know that, I understand what I'm promoting to clients.
Absolutely. I think that background must be so helpful, especially because you've seen so many different things and you're very experienced. So I'm wondering if there's anything you teach your clients that you wish you would have known from the beginning.
As far as, I think a lot of it, what I have really trained, like switched my mindset, and is I find that most people, when they start working with me, they're not eating enough. And I know that's like a really blanket statement. But what I have found helpful and what I typically tend to do with the clients first is have them not focus so much on the scale weight, but focusing on the other biofeedback as far as, energy levels and how they feel and how their clothes fit and their strength gains. And, have they been successful tracking macros or following their meal plans, their cardio and such, and having them focus on all of that while we work on maybe adding food in. So trying to build up what they're eating, and having them utilize maybe that extra energy in the gym. Because otherwise, what I found to be a trend is clients would start and maybe they're already overweight. They want to lose body fat, typical. But when I would have them track for about a week just to see where they were as like a good starting point, I was always surprised by how little some of them are actually eating, is assuming they're being honest. And then I'm like, okay, well, if we start pulling from what you're already eating and you're not eating very much anyway, we're going to get so low to where it's just not realistic to maintain that. So trying to maybe build the macros first and then having them focus on other things and then coming back later and pulling away some of the macros when we're ready for more of an active fat loss.
So really emphasizing the non-scale victories and habit building above anything else.
Yeah, especially if they're new to even tracking anything or they're new to following any type of a meal plan. Like that's successful in itself. And I always try to tell clients too, like, at the end of the week, if they're like, oh gosh, I was off 3 days. I'm like, yeah, but you were on 4. Mm-hmm. So that's better than, 3. And, also encouraging them too, that if they have a slip up, acknowledge the slip up and move on. You don't have to wait till Monday, because if it's Tuesday and you already had a slip up and now you're going to wait till Monday again, well, there's like 5 days that you just lost again. And so really, I'm trying to emphasize that it's okay to slip up. It's okay to not be perfect. Any little change that you make is going to contribute to the bigger picture and the outcome that we're looking for.
Yes. And I think that when you're developing a lifestyle of any sort, you have to start with where you're at and be okay with not being 20 steps ahead and know that it takes time and energy and effort, and you got to learn and be willing to experiment. And this goes for competitors too, but like, if you're not willing to experiment, you won't learn. So if you're always trying to just do what everybody else is doing, you're probably missing out on what's actually best for you. So it is important to just be compassionate and give yourself grace when needed.
Yes, absolutely.
So I hear you have an obsession with Eminem. I wanted to know what your favorite song is of his.
Oh my gosh, like all of them. But no, I really like Godzilla because.
Now, do you know all the lyrics?
No, but at like 30 seconds from the end. So like if I'm watching it, if I'm looking at my phone, when it gets to like 31 from the end, that's the best.
So I'll have to listen to that.
No, it's kind of a silly quirk thing. Oh gosh. When I was in 7th and 8th grade, I was like obsessed with him. And I would say probably most days I have listened to at least something of his every day since. Like whether it's while I'm working out or in the car. I can remember my youngest being really little and I was driving kids back from soccer practice and Eminem came on and I hadn't been able to like turn it yet. And my youngest, she was tiny and she's like, oh, don't worry. We listen to this all the time. We just can't repeat the words. I'm like, oh my gosh, mother of the year. But
that's so cute.
No, it's fun. My husband went to Detroit, a year or 2 ago, and he was so sweet. He drove through the trailer park where Eminem grew up so he could get pictures for me.
Oh, that's nice.
He said it was pretty sketchy.
Yeah. Oh, that's super cool that he would do that for you. I think I definitely went through an Eminem phase in middle school myself. And then but my main go-to has always been Aerosmith. Like I know that's very different, but I would say that I've always been fairly obsessive over Aerosmith.
And I think part of it is the nostalgia too.
Mm.
But I love, when he's come up with his new content and that too. I love it all. So I guess I just haven't fallen out of my phase.
That's okay. You found what you like.
Yep.
So I would love to ask you now for your best advice for new competitors, people who've never competed before but would like to, and then competitors who are on their road to pro.
So definitely new competitors, do your homework. Know the different divisions. And if you don't know the different divisions, ask somebody who does, or take it upon yourself to look up the divisions. One thing that I kind of saw, maybe not as recently, but when wellness first came out, it was like the idea of wellness was just an unconditioned bikini competitor. And we know that that's not the case at all. But, doing the research, that's just an example of somebody who just kind of hearsay, what they think, but they really should look into the divisions, do the research, see what the posing looks like, follow some of the top athletes in that division, watch shows. If you can attend a show, even better. But if you're not at a position or location where you can attend a show, which they're everywhere, so you should be able to, at least, get online. There's so many resources out there that there's really no excuse to not have any idea. Coaches are so important. Get a coach to guide you, but at the end of the day, you're still responsible for yourself, and for, what you put into the sport too is what also you're going to render.
Mm-hmm. Love that. And what about for those on their road to pro?
Looking at the journey as just, instead of saying like, when does prep start? You're always in prep. It's just a different phase of prep. So whether you're in a building phase or the cutting phase, but being consistent through it all. So, kind of what I said earlier about like not waiting till posing till you're officially a certain number of weeks out, not waiting to do some of those things just when you're in quote prep, doing the things all year long that contribute to your success at the end. So, like I said earlier, the stretching, the nutrition, the cardio, the training, the supplements, all the extra touch-up exercises or vacuums or posing, all those things should be consistent throughout the entire process and not just waiting till you're on prep. Because I think too, like for me, that's what was missing in order for me to really start putting all the pieces together, was just consistency. So for someone to turn pro, I think consistency, and then just being patient. I know it can get discouraging, but when it's your time, it's your time. And I know that's often said, so it sounds a little cliche, but if you put in the work and at least that you gave every ounce of effort, that's gonna make you feel good, and then just keep driving for it. And when it's your time, that pro card will come.
Amazing. I so appreciate everything that you have shared with us, and I'd love for everyone to be able to continue following your journey. So can you let people know how they can find you, connect with you, and even work with you?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram, Ashley_IFBB Pro. And yeah, that's mainly where I hang out. Anybody can DM me. I always respond back. And yeah, would love to hear from anybody. It's always interesting to me when I'm able to connect with people from different areas. And I love learning from other people. I typically like to do a consult call with somebody who's interested. And even if they decide that, I'm not the route they're looking for or whatnot, I still always remind them that I'm just thankful to be able to talk to different people and to hear different stories. And that just keeps me further driven and reminded of why I love this so much.
Beautiful. I will put that in the show notes page, so your Instagram will be there. And you guys, that's always on www.celestial.fit/podcast. If you're listening to this episode first thing on Friday, it's going to be at the top of that page. If you're listening down the road, just scroll down to the category section. It's all alphabetized there. Find Ashley Duncan. And you'll be able to see not just how to connect with her, but also episode timestamps. You can go back and listen to certain parts. You'll see a full breakdown of all the topics we covered, so you can tell your friends about it, and a summary of the episode itself, so you can kind of reflect back on some of those salient points. So thank you guys so much for listening. And Ashley, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. Hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just